right, good evening and welcome to the June 4th meeting of the school board, or regular meeting. I'll start by saying that we have translation services available this evening. If you are in the room and require translation services, you can go to the back. We have headsets for you to use. And if you are on Zoom and need translation assistance, please click on the circle icon on the bottom of your screen and we will get you set up that way. And now we'll ask for that to be translated, please.
Buenas noches. Tenemos servicios de interpretación para las personas que necesitan. Si están en persona, pueden ir en el salón y hay unos auriculares. Y si están en Zoom, pueden hacernos saber. Hay un globo terráqueo y oprimen eso y así nos hacen saber que ustedes necesitan acceso al español. Gracias.
Didn't ask me, Andy. Thank you. All right. The board met in closed session immediately prior to gathering now in open session, and we discussed anticipated litigation, personnel item, and real property discussion. Do we have consensus on the order of business? I'm a little scattered here. My computer has decided that this is a good time to update, so just bear with me. Okay. Our first item this evening is our retiree recognition. So, Mr. Block.
All right, good evening, board. The last two board meetings are some exciting times. 2 weeks ago, I got to present our employees and teachers of the year, and it was exciting for everybody last week, or last board meeting, and tonight's really exciting for some select few that are retiring. Public education is such a calling. I was reading an article somewhat recently that it said in this new world that new graduates will have approximately 12 careers. Where public educators are called to that, and many of the people on this list have given their adult life from 22 on into this profession. I'd also say that it's not just teachers or educators that are on this list. We have custodians, office clerks, secretaries, district office, it could be electricians. And I think all of them that are drawn to public education because they support what we do, they support students. And before we begin, just give them a round of applause. Some on this list started in other districts and came to us. Some have spent their entire career with us. We have about a third of them with us tonight. And so we'll acknowledge them, but we're going to read everybody's name. And then after our presentation, we're going to show a slideshow that honors our retirees this year. I'd also, if I read a name and that person is not here, or excuse me, as that person seems like they've been gone for a while, it's everybody who's retired since the board meeting last June. So if a custodian resigned in January, they're still going to get recognized tonight. All right, with that, I'm going to call the retirees' names. And again, I'm going to get everybody. And if they're not here, I have highlighted who indicated they'd be here, and I'll pause a little on them. School board, if you would like to come out and come to the front, that would be outstanding to recognize our retirees. And I listed Mr. Pinkerton and Miss Yamashita. So if you'd start over here with Dr. Prater, and then we'll get you the flowers at the end of this very prestigious line. Julie Albano. Jamie Andre. Denise Baca. Katie Baker. I happen to know our first one is in attendance here. Carl Bloom. Jan Christofferson. Steve Cossey. Joanne Koza Furson. Joan Doherty. Kimberly Dimbat. Gary Edmondson. Denise Emerson. Kathy Greer. Jack Greer. Robin Haas. Mary Kay Stratton. Patricia Harper. Anne Marie Hoffman. Deborah Jeffries. Carmen Jimenez. Richard Johnson. William Johnston. Teresa Larson. Next one I have to pause. This is a first in my 3 years of doing this. We have Jeff Lemke cannot be here tonight because of senior showcase, but his wife is here and I'm going to have her come through the line. So Jeff Lemke, San Luis High. Yeah, that's great. Julie Mamo. Amanda Odell Roach. Joe Atrondo. Beverly Reisick. Brenda Saletta. Aaron Shimke. Oh, come on in. We even have a flower for you too. Jeff Lemkule. That was my last one. Okay. Oscar Schwab. Laura Schwer. Teresa Smith. Barbara Salitis. And Roberta Villa Wagner. And what's it? Mike Wood? Okay, Mike Wood. Yeah.
Let's have cookies. board back to their seats, please. We can continue on with our meeting.
It looked like a tech store.
One, two, three, four. Did you see the coffee back there? All right, we're going to continue on with our agenda. Move on.
Yep.
Thanks, everyone, for coming and for your service, and enjoy retirement. Right. Our next item on the agenda is 7.01 correspondence, and at the time the agenda was published, we had received official correspondence from Eric Gomez with regard to Board Policy 5145.12. And now we will move on to public comment. This is the time in the meeting if there's anyone who would like to address the board on an item on the agenda, or if it's not on the agenda within the purview of the district, this is your chance. You will be given 3 minutes. We do request that people fill out a yellow sheet on the table on the back and bring it up, and Mrs. Roger will call your name. And for those of you on Zoom, we'll go to you after we thank you very much, Jeremy. We'll call on you after we have people in the room. You will have 3 minutes in which to address the board. A timer will appear on the screen, and we do stick to our 3 minutes strictly. So at this time, Mrs. Roger, I see a yellow sheet.
Okay, I have one request to speak. Forgive me if I mangle your name, but I think it is Keisha Nevejas. Please come up.
I got the whole room to myself. Well, good evening, board members. Thank you so much for letting me speak tonight. My name is Keisha Nevejas, and I'm here on the behalf of Tech Time Communications. We're eager to reintroduce ourselves to the district. We have been working in the Central Coast since 1980. For some reason, we have a very long-standing good relationship with every school district on the Central Coast except for San Luis Coastal. And that's something that I would like to remedy. Last fall, we did try to bid a couple of public works jobs, and on the public works docs, it was stated that you had a district standard of notifier for your fire alarm. I then did go reach out to the MOT director, Chris Bonin, and I called, I did a couple emails, I got no response. So I actually went and talked to the lovely ladies at the superintendent's office, and they were very, very helpful. And they did inform me that they could not find one, but they got me in touch with Mr. Pinkerton. And he did inform me that there was no district standard. Yeah, I would like to see that removed from the public docs in order for you guys to receive fair and competitive bidding within the district. We do specialize in fire alarm, intercom, and security work. And we would love to build that relationship with the district once again. Thank you so much for hearing me. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Pinkerton, if there is a response needed, would you please get with Ms. Nevejas?
Yeah, we'll do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I see is there anyone else present in the room who would like to address us? And now we'll find out on Zoom. And none. Thank you. All right. Next, we move on to our superintendent's updates.
Yeah, I'm going to start with having Mr. Block come up and address the board. We had some common and public comment at our last board meeting in regards to some of our staffing practices at Laguna Middle School. And I just thought it would be appropriate for Mr. Block to kind of share what's happened over the last 2 years in terms of hiring practices and kind of where we stand now.
Yeah, and as the board knows, it is something that we pay a lot of attention to, and gender being one of the things, bilingual skills is another thing. So with the update, keep that in mind. Currently at Laguna Middle School, there's 22 female, 18 male, one non-binary. Support staff, 16 female, 4 male. Office staff, 5 female. Administration, 2 male, 1 female. In 2023, 2024 hiring of 7 new teachers, 6 were female, and 1 was male, replacing 5 female and 2 male staff. So far in 24-25, and we're not done. There's still a couple hires to be done at Laguna. 3 female and 6 male staff members, replacing 4 female, 3 male, and 1 non-binary staff. And 3 of the 6 male teachers that we have hired are also bilingual.
Thank you, Mr. Block.
Thank you. Thanks for that clarification, Mr. Block.
Just a couple other quick things because we have our LCAP and budget tonight. But again, I just shout out to Katie Eklund, to Stephanie Shepard. Just so the board knows, the state puts out this LCAP document. They want you to fill it out. They want you to do all these guidelines with no direction at all. So you're working on it as you go, right? As you go through and literally even in the past 2 weeks, new insights, things that of course we took care of and are going to be reflected in the LCAP document tonight, right? But again, only because Stephanie and Katie have spent countless hours making sure that we have everything we need to have in that document, working with the county office. So I'm excited about having them share that tonight. And then lastly, I wanted to give another huge shout out to Aaron Primer, Dr. Prater, Ms. Yamashita, myself, got to attend kind of the end of the year food service gathering. And of course, they have to have a food service gathering at 7 a.m. in the morning, right? Because we got to feed kids at 7:30, at 8 o'clock, they got to go to side. So they do it Monday because it's a late start, but Erin just and her team just did a great job, gave out awards for who delivered the most meals and drove the most miles and who had the most the most kids eat breakfast and that, but literally I think over 1.3 million meals we served this year, and I just can't say enough about Erin and her team and kind of what just where they were from, just the boxes from COVID, right, to today. And she has a group called Culture Stoke that they've brought in using some grant funds for food service. And it's a way, it's kind of an organization that helps you just breed positivity about what you're doing and your job. And so you could just see it in the faces of the employees and just, it was really, really nice. So I walked away. I learned a lot from watching Erin and her team that day. So things that maybe we can do with the rest of our staffs. But it was a great event on Monday.
We are so fortunate to have Erin Primer and her team. We're really fortunate. All right, we will move on to educational services update. Ms. Yamashita.
Well, what an exciting time, board. As you know, many of you are coming with us to all of the end of year celebrations at our schools, and we get to learn and hear about how much our students have accomplished, of course, with the support of our amazing teaching staff and our strong, beautiful site leaders. And to that end, I had a great time going to visit the C.L. Smith open house with Mr. Black and tour their classrooms. And they had the big music going and a talent show going. And they had a scavenger hunt related to Leader in Me going. And it was just a beautiful evening for all. I've continued to do some classroom and site visits. We worked with the board policy subcommittee with these 2 board policies we're bringing to you tonight. I was also working with our high school. So a lot of the work we're doing right now, of course, is planning into next school year. And so one of the discussions with the high schools was around our Spanish class offerings and how to make sure the right students get into those right classes to help them excel and earn that seal of biliteracy. I also did another challenge for us as we look into next school year is of course planning for our elementary schools. And we anticipate there's going to be the need for a couple of combination classes or multi-age classrooms where we have different students in different grades in one teacher's class working together. And so we know that there are some benefits to that, and there are also some challenges to that. And so we met as a leadership group to talk about communication and preparing to make the workload doable for our teachers and sharing some research around it, et cetera. So we want to be sure to support our on the ground staff to prepare well for the students and families that get to be in combo classes next year. Similarly, I had the opportunity to start visioning and working on planning for adult school as Mr. Neff is joining us and Dan Block and Mr. O'Connor are going to be moving on to adult school. We were talking about all the growth areas and possibilities for future opportunities, specifically, most notably on the coast, and being able to take some of our adult school programming directly out to Los Osos and Morro Bay community. So more will be coming next year about that. We were talking about middle school ELA alignment as well. And as you know, we want our middle school students and staff, we hear from parents, we hear from students, more rigor, more relevancy in the instruction. We also have these beautiful new language arts programs, the Into Literature we purchased, and we want to ensure that there's a really clear plan for how to maximize that first instruction in our classrooms. And so Jane Hawley, our current secondary TOSA, is working with our principals to design a professional learning opportunity next year for our English language arts teachers. And I've met with some special families needing extra attention and care for their needs and their students' needs. So it's been a wonderful, fun time in the Ed Services Department.
Yeah, so on the bond front, we have tonight, we have a GMP for 9 temporary classrooms. You'll see we've changed the form around a little bit to make it really clear about what the GMP is, what's in it, what's not. And I'll review that later in the meeting. I'll also let the board know that we also received our developer fee justification study. So it's been several years since we've increased our developer fees in the school district. And so the justification shows that we can and should increase our fees. And so actually we have posted that. It goes out to the different variety of sites to let people know about it. And we'll be bringing that potential resolution for the board's consideration at the next meeting in June 18th.
Thank you. Right. Our next item is the second reading and adoption of the 2024-25 Local Control Accountability Plan.
All right, good evening, board. Thank you for having us here tonight to bring to you the second and hopefully final reading of our LCAP template for the starting 24-25, 25-26, and 26-27 school year. Again, I'd like to celebrate the hard work my entire team did along working with the fiscal department and HR department in crafting this work. It was a big project to both take what we know to be good and strong instruction, meld it with what we hear from our parents, community members, staff members, and students. And then try and also fit it in the boxes, of course, that the state requires of us to do and make it all comprehensible. So we're here tonight to celebrate the hard work of our team. Janet Gould, I'd like to celebrate. She also contributed as students with disabilities, you know, have to be called out and named, as well as Mr. O'Connor, although he is not up here with us. We address the needs of our secondary students as well.
There we go. Okay. So as the board knows, this is a process of continual improvement. And even since the first reading a few weeks ago, we've continued to work with the SLOCO individuals that are providing us with feedback and guidance to ensure that we're meeting all of the state requirements. And so you were informed as of Friday within the Friday notes around what some of those revisions to the documents have been from the first reading. One of those that I'll call out was the measurement of what we shorten down to LTELs, which are long-term English learners. And these are students that have been in the public school system for 6 or more years without being reclassified. And so we're excited about this metric. It already aligned with the work that we were doing, and what we're doing now, and you'll see within this revised document, is that that actual category subgroup of students is called out. So in addition to the EL population being monitored, we're also going to continue to monitor our RFEP, or reclassified as fluent English proficient, as well as our long-term English learners. This will help us do an even better job of ensuring that we're meeting the needs of all of these subcategories of students that are learning English. You also saw that we did not change any of the actions, but we were, under SLOCO's guidance, regrouping things a little bit more clearly. And so one example that I want to call out is within Goal 2, Action 2, where we took a few of our action steps that were tied to Goal 1, which is first best instruction, and we pulled those out of Goal 2 and clumped them together, grouped them together so that we can better monitor, or more effectively monitor, the progress of those actions related to our EL students. We also had an addition under Goal 3 at the board's recommendation around our students' positive perception of the strong relationships with the adults in the school as well. So all of the updated documents have been linked within this presentation and were shared with the board this last Friday. And in addition to working with SLOCO, we also opened up public comment following our first reading a few weeks ago. We had 7 respondents. Of those 7, 5 people provided written comments, which were shared with the board for your approval over the weekend as well. And we do plan to continue to consider these recommendations and written comments from the public as we begin to plan for implementation over the summer. The majority of the comments were from caregivers of our students.
So in moving some of those action items around, it changed the overall budgets in the categories. So our focus 1, which is to make sure that our teachers are doing first best strong instruction with the students in their classrooms, to focus on EL student best practices, how to address the needs of socioeconomically disadvantaged students, and how to help support our foster homeless youth students. Got reduced down to 589,485. Ooh, we're going to test my reading numbers skills right now. And then it increased in the focus area 2, and it went up to 4,562,538. I mostly taught kindergarten and first grade, but I got it done. In the focus area 2 are academic supports, and we did have a very robust meeting just today with the members of our MTSS team and our student services team to start developing a very clear vision and mission of the MTSS work as it rolls forward. And we know how important it is to make it more robust and direct in the middle school level as well. And we're working on plans for all of that. So you'll be hearing more about all of that in the coming year. And then our intentional culture of care continues to be about the same allocation of, right? I think it's the same 1,765,986,000. And I had gotten shared with me a document that was a research article regarding how important it is to target the use of funds to the high needs group students. And there was some comments and questions about, are we doing that enough? Are we doing that well enough? And if you look at approximately our $6 million, with the $589,000, it's really only about 10% going to a broad group of students and the rest being targeted actions. So we're very proud of how targeted our LCAP is compared to many other LCAPs across the state.
Can I ask about parent connectedness under Focus 3? What are we doing about that?
So, within our parent connectedness, we have a large, I would have to look at the documents. I can pull it up while Lisa's talking in a minute. But what we've done is allocated funding towards parent education, and we're specifically targeting outreach through our DLAC, and then also wanting to ensure that we're extending a formal invitation to our families who are qualifying as SED.
Okay, that's great beginning. Yeah, thank you.
We're excited. It's a greater proportion of dollars being expended in this area than what we've done in the past.
Wonderful.
And one of the main action areas as well to that parent connectedness, there's actually a couple, but Michael Boyer consulting with us on parent engagement groups at all of our middle and all of our schools. So more to come on that soon.
Okay, I'll stay tuned.
And then you're next.
And so here we are at the final stage of our journey here around the LCAP for this year. We will come back to the board in February of 2025 to provide a mid-year update, similar to what we did this last year, to provide updates on all of the metrics that are associated and tied to the LCAP, as well as providing you with updates on the expenditures at the midpoint in the year. That's in addition to all of the other presentations that are given to the board to share data and progress monitoring as it relates both to the LCAP and beyond. So that will occur throughout the year. It will be interwoven in all of the work that we do.
I wanted to mention in the many documents you have is the local indicators. Oh, that's our last slide. But it's another document we're required to share with you to report on the local indicators and if we're meeting those standards or not. And we're pleased to report we are meeting all of them. So that is what we had to share with you today.
First, I'd like to go to the public, see if there's anyone from the public who would like to comment on this item. I don't see anyone in the room and no one on Zoom, so we'll come back to the board. Ms. Hinton.
Yes, under this, can you put up the slide with the 5 graphs? Just put that one back. I
Slide
had it
2,
on,
please.
yeah, I had it in front of me, but now I don't have it. Yeah, the slide 2. Um, do you have the slide 2?
It's coming. I am confident it is coming.
I can speak to it.
Yeah. If you want to start sharing your
Yeah.
question with us, we
Yeah.
can try and.
Well, you'd have, why don't you come back to me
Oh.
because
It might be coming.
I want to get it up in front of me, and so that'll just take a couple of minutes to put it on my computer. You can come back.
Can we go? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, now it's there.
There we are. There we go.
It, so under the annual update, oh, I can't, of course, I can't open that, but it's a link that will open. Could you open it?
I am not able to open
Yeah,
it,
we're not
but
able to open it right here.
if you want to reference a page, I have everything
Okay.
printed out here.
Question is, I have to remember, instead of having it in front of me, so just come back to me, that'll be fine.
It's right here. You know what page it is?
I have my own copy of the agenda, and I'm just looking for that right now. All right, you can come back to me. Take somebody else and then come back to me.
Is there anyone else who has a question up here? I have a question, or just kind of a comment that I'd like to just talk about a little bit, and that is our outreach, that it began in January. And I just want to confirm, it's my understanding that our public outreach was available via, email always to any of us and or to administration to through the website, or were people able to link and make comments or ask questions to the website? I see affirmation. And then at the meetings at the sites, the road show, those were open to anyone and everyone. Is that correct?
Those were open to all the staff members at the school site, classified and certified. It was not open to parents.
Okay, so what was available for parents?
I'll let you read
What
off the
did that look
list.
like?
Go for it.
So if you look at page 6 within the LCAP template itself, we have a table in there that outlines all of the steps that were taken. Not all of them are necessarily related to parents. This is all of our educational partners. So it lists
Why don't
our
you read the
staff.
parent ones?
So our parent ones in particular are listed as the LCAP pack. And so there was all of these meetings are open to the public. And so you'll see on January 25th, we had our first meeting. Our second meeting was on February 8th. Our third meeting was April 4th. And then we had a fourth meeting on April 23rd.
And we also did the electronic and paper survey outreach starting February 20th.
And
that
that
was-
remained open for how long?
Right, that was April 20th through March 29th. So it was more than a month.
Okay, okay, so,
And you wanted to know if the roadshow was open to the public. The
Mhm.
roadshow presentation
it
was
was.
posted on our
Yeah.
district
That's
website
right, it was.
as
Okay.
well after Ryan and Lisa created that, and it's still live.
okay, all right. So there were several opportunities for participation and input from the public. And I know that, I just wanted to state that the comments and information we received from the public, the board received, and we certainly have taken that information into consideration as we go through our examination of the LCAP and the contents. So, Mr. Buckman.
Oh.
And I think.
I'm sorry. I wanted you to come back to me. Is yours on the same subject as hers? Go right ahead.
And I think that. And I think it's critical too, and that hasn't been mentioned, is the outreach to students, which is, I don't know, double or triple more than it has been in the past, through the Superintendent Student Senate. Eric, how many members in the Student Senate?
125.
Yeah, so just thank you for that, but I just want to make sure we mention the students.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Buckman, for including that.
And
Mrs.
I would be
Hinton,
remiss
thank
if I also didn't mention our DLAC
Oh, yes.
representatives as well. And so when we had a public DLAC meeting that we call the Fiesta each year, a large contingency of parents were able to come, and we went through the survey in a very thorough manner before offering them the opportunity to fill it out.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Right, Mrs. Hinton.
Thank you. So on the annual update, that part, that middle part of the 5 graphs that we were talking about, I have a couple of questions about that, maybe 2 or 3. First of all, usually we want to see a student performance of an increase in student performance by 5%, but I see on the desired outcome for the that we want, that actually it varies from 5%, such as the 6th grade winter benchmark for math the actual winter outcome was 34%, but the desired for the end of the year is 49%. I just wondering where that came from. And there are many other examples like that.
Are you on page 2 then?
That would be 2.
Okay. And you said the 6th grade winter.
Yeah, the
benchmark.
second one down,
Mhm.
but it's not just that one. I mean, it applies to, say, the third one down, 7th grade benchmark. Winter outcome is, the actual results are 41%. And then it says the desired results, and it still says winter though, is 50%. So because we're talking about 5% increment increases, I don't know
it's a
how to
great-
interpret.
No, it's a great noticing. And what I'll say is we noticed the same thing when we were looking at the data and we did make some adjustments. So this is for the previous 3-year LCAP that we are doing this annual update on. And what we noticed was that I don't want to say all, but many of the indicators had a flat 5% increase. And based upon the conversations that we've had with the board as well as with the public, many of those metrics and those goals that we are setting for the district have changed and been modified. So we did keep that higher level of 5% for many of the subgroups. That is our goal year over year, that we want to be growing 5%. When we look at the overall data, those will vary in many of the metrics based upon what we've learned from this last 3 years. And so some of those, I believe it was Mr. Unger was asking at the last board meeting, why are we shooting for 1% versus the 5% we were previously? And that's been based upon our historical data trends.
Well, my question is quite the opposite, though. Instead of less percentage, there's a great increase of percentage. So the 6th grade benchmark goes, I can't see the top of it. I think it's 21, 22 is, it was 39%, and the next year, 34%, which is down. The next year, which is this past winter, 34%. And then we're saying something about 49% all of a sudden, 15 percentage points higher.
So
I don't know how
that
to
far right-hand column, I do have to say that this isn't the easiest template to read, so I apologize, but we don't create this template. Remember, the state does. And so if you turn to page 1 and direct your attention over to the very far right-hand side, it says desired outcome for 23-24. That means that's what our goal was.
So
Well,
Rick,
okay, of course I saw that. That's what I'm commenting on, the desired outcome, which is, it's so variable. Sometimes only 2 or 3%, and then sometimes 15% or something like that. That's all. Yeah. Well, to be continued, maybe you could explain it to me a little more.
I think
I
what
don't
we've
later.
done is
Right.
we're seeking to, in this next 3-year LCAP, make it much more clear so that it's labeled as we want to see a 3% annual increase, so that over a 3-year period, we would actually see a 9% increase. And so what we've done is we've actually put what we want that desired metric to be in that far right-hand side column for the new LCAP.
Okay, and then as they line up, it's hard to follow horizontally across. Can that be fixed?
Unfortunately, it cannot. This is the table in which we are required to work.
All right. That's it for now. Thank you.
Thank you.
So perhaps the state could benefit from some best practices in setting forth data and information in a more readable manner. Mr.
I'll be ready.
Okay. Any other questions while we wait for Mr. Buckner? Hey, it's tight.
Okay. So just for the benefit of folks and to the benefit to show the amount of work that goes into it, just one more time. These are something like over 53 reports, including the LCAP, that staff has to fill out every year. And many times we don't even know if they're read. So thank you for using the template. We know it's weird, but it's amazing that you can do it all. Okay, so to my question, first of all, the 23-24 LCAP was last year and the end of a 3-year cycle. Okay, just checking. So, and this new one is some of it's going to be in response to how we performed there. So I just want to give kudos for all the work that went into this, but I just want to also point out that there was a lot of work that's going to be needed to get done. So just in the last LCAP, so the last 3 years, student performance in mathematics, everybody increased except SED, which went down 2%. In English, same thing, SED went down 2%. So my reading of the new action plan is a lot of, and you just brought it up, a lot of emphasis on trying to make that better. Do I have that? And do we have some specific, anything really specific, like blue pencils? Or isn't that just too specific?
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited about a lot of changes. I already spoke to some of them in the coming school year.
Right.
We are going to ensure that many of our students at the elementary level that are EL, but performing in the level 3 and level 4 language production are able to stay in their regular classroom for as much of the day and not get pulled out and disrupt their school day learning. And so we're excited. I also think we anticipate what I'm hearing from some elementary principals is our elementary teachers who already got to participate in the pilot of the Science of Reading programs. Those classrooms that students are taking the state test right now are already seeing gains, even in the upper grades. And we were concerned that the upper grade students who had gaps in knowledge in the programming would be the most likely to experience an implementation dip, even though we were trying to do something new and better, but it may not actually show right away because kids would have holes in their knowledge. But we're hearing anecdotal feedback from our principals that it's already making a difference. All of our attendance work, right? For children to be able to learn, they need to come to school. So the first thing to tackle is make sure kids are coming to school regularly and removing barriers for students that aren't by helping them feel like they belong and helping families feel like they can get the resources they need. And you've seen in the Friday Focus, we've already made great gains in that. And I'll be bringing later tonight more plans moving forward for that to create gains. We're talking about at the middle school that alignment work around language arts to ensure all of our students get rigorous language arts at the middle school level. I think talking about the Spanish placement, why does that matter? Well, that matters because when kids get into advanced Spanish classes earlier in their high school career, they can take an AP Spanish Lang or AP Spanish Lit early and earn AP credits and the GPA bump, even though they might be a student that's a second language learner and an English learner student. But if they're literate in Spanish language arts, then they can excel in those college style courses. So there are a lot of specific things, not to mention all the work around helping our educators learn new things. If we keep doing the same things we've always done, we should expect to get the same results. And the only way to get different results is to change what we're doing. And so all of the professional development opportunities for our staff, both our leaders, the district office staff, and our teachers, I'm really hopeful will make a big impact on the students.
And I so appreciate that, and I appreciate all the EL work. So at some point, I'm hoping that we'll hear specifically SED work. And just another question is, it looked to me when you did the summaries of the input that 3 groups, I think parents, students, and maybe another group talked about tutors. And can you tell me how we're addressing that in the new LCAP? I mean, maybe that wasn't enough input to make it significant enough, but
Correct. Yeah. So it didn't become statistically significant in the feedback. However, what we do know is that if we offer differentiated instruction during the school day, that we can make up more ground for students. And it allows all students access versus if in a traditional tutoring model, it's done before or after school and not all kids can always access that. And so through our MTSS systems, that's the way that we have kids in front of us. We're reducing chronic absenteeism. And so getting those kids in front of us and then capitalizing on our win time is really where the power lies in elementary.
I do have 2 exciting things upcoming next school year related to that tutoring. Mr. Buckman, one of them is related. Again, this is one of the quirks of our LCAP being 6 million of $130 million budget, being one of the districts where your LCAP is over half your money. And so all the stuff gets named in the LCAP. Because neither of the projects I'm talking about are necessarily named in our LCAP because they don't require funding from that source for us. One of which is going to be our middle school attendance and academic academies that will be happening on Saturdays. So for students who miss school and they need to make up some time with us, they will be invited and have the opportunity to come spend a Saturday morning with some academic tutoring and engaging, enriching activities. And so that's one of the areas. The other area we're considering shifting and changing. It's always been a goal of our elementary athletics for achievement program to have a tutoring component. And there has been, although we offer stipends, it's been an issue of time and enough people to provide the tutoring. And so we're looking at restructuring how that program is being offered at the district office support, and hope that it will allow for some tutoring to coexist with the athletics after school. So we do have, again, that's one of those things where, yes, we hear from families and teachers that we want tutoring to happen, and we can make that happen, but not necessarily from this pot of money in the LCAP. It's going to be ELOPE funding, which is our extended learning funding.
That's absolutely awesome.
Yeah,
Sorry.
Mr. O'Connor would like to jump in.
Yeah, I mean, something to add with regards to the tutoring. I mean, obviously you understand the work we're doing with Abbott at the secondary level, middle
Right.
school and high school. You understand the work we're doing with our next gen students, partnership with Cal Poly and the College Core
That's-
program.
Yep.
So we've got 37 Cal Poly students, you know, each receiving $10,000 through the grant at Cal Poly. So when you're looking at utilizing capital resource, almost $400,000, and we're setting our students up in the middle and high school level with personalized tutoring opportunities. So our staff are opening Zoom in the evening for our tutors who are Cal Poly students to be able to join with students in their home, because the model has to change where if we can afford something for our own children, we want that for our children that perhaps are an extension of our family. And so that's something that we're really leaning into, and we want to continue to build that partnership. So the work of Marcy Badal, Jane Holly, our team, working at the secondary level to really build that out next year will be so important.
I'm just amazed. So here's what I'm hearing, and here's why I'm so excited, because when I saw it come up, the tutoring come up in 3 groups, and it was in the LCAP. So what I did is I looked for the program, in my mind, the solution in the LCAP. And so I'm so excited to hear that it's recognized and that it's funded, and that there's some steps going forward. And I wrote down College Core here as well. Thank you very much. So I think that what I'm hearing is things even that came up in the LCAP surveys, even if it's not addressed in the LCAP, administration staff heard it and is addressing it. So thank you very much. I appreciate that.
It'd be one of those 53 reports, Mr. Buckman.
Yes, I know.
Well, and that's it. We could write tutoring and everything else under the sun in the LCAP that we do in our schools. But for the sake of efficiency of time, and we have to report out in metric, and the LCAP, I read in that report that was shared with me, LA Unified's, I think LCAP was 450 pages long. Well, at that point, how useful of a document can it really be? And so I do want you to know, we do listen to our community. We're doing our very best to serve all of our students well and move the district forward in its academic achievement.
Again, if I can just say thank you. Great, thank you.
Right. Any other questions from the board? This is an action item. I'm so excited that we're going to adopt this evening.
Can I?
Mr. Buckman?
Yes, I'd like to move to address the LCAP. 2024,
All right,
25
we have a
LCAP.
motion by Mr. Buckman, a second by Mrs. Hinton. Mr. Buckman,
Yes.
Mrs. Hinton,
Yes.
Mrs. Roger,
Yes.
Mr. Banfield.
Yes.
And I'm a yes. We have 5 yeses, 2 absent this evening. All right, thank you. Thank you for all your work on that. So deserved, so deserved. Thank you. This is
Just saying.
this
Should we
is
stop
an-
and have cookies?
this is an indication of what an undertaking this is. Followed and then on the heels, we have tonight, this evening, our budget adoption as well.
And even beyond the LCAP. So great.
So thank you. 9.02, adoption of the 2024-25 budget.
Can I lead it from here, you guys, or no? That might be easier for me to. Actually, yeah, that's perfect. Tenure is great if I can. Fantastic. All right. So we had a first reading last meeting. Ms. Eklund went through kind of the slides, update a lot of the SACS forms, and then tonight is kind of my job, I think, with the board is the big picture, right? That's kind of what the 10-year projection does, kind of lets you know where do we stand, where are we at. And so a few comments with that, right, as we go through it, as I'll go through this, kind of budget, 10-year budget part of it and kind of point some things out. We've been very fortunate over the past few years with increases in property tax revenues. And again, as we've talked about before, that's good and bad. It's great for our bottom line. It's tough to live here for our employees, right? So it's good and bad. But from a revenue standpoint, it's fantastic, right, for us. It's really helpful. And it's provided the board the opportunity to, things like this year, increase our overall salaries for employees from an extra 3% to an extra 6%, right? So, which kind of brought us more in line with what other districts around us are doing. In terms of the 10-year, when I look at the revenues in the first page, what I'd like to point out is really the blue sections on this chart. And so it's hard to see a little bit on your side. Hopefully you guys can see it at home, but what that represents is the one-time dollars we received through COVID. And it's roughly $30 million, the one-time funds. So not only have we had the positive increases in terms of property taxes, which is something that stays with us, right, that we continue to have. This is a ton of extra one-time funds, which is, again, great, right? Terrific to have those extra things. We've added a lot of staff, which I've outlined before in the past using those dollars. So then if we drop all the way to the bottom line, again, some positive news, right? If we go down to the bottom, since the first year of this 10-year budget projection, we were at $25 million, $24,929. And we project to end this year at about 32.4. So an increase of $10 million, right, over that time period. Now, I just told you that we got 30 million extra in one-time funds, and our bottom line grew by 10 million. So we've spent $20 million during those years, right? So again, while it's great and fantastic to have those extra dollars to see our reserves grow with those one-time funds, if you continue to look down the line, what you'll see is that we have a structural deficit happening right now where we're spending more than we're bringing in, right? Because those one-time dollars are going away. So Katie and her team have done a great job, especially this year, to spend those one-time restricted funds, right? Because there's a lot of the government, both the state and the federal government like to give you a lot of money. And then after about 2 years, they like to give you more and more regulations about how you can spend it, what you can spend it, how you need to track it, the documentation you have to send in to do it. So all those things that go along with it, right? So the sooner we spend those funds and just have our general fund dollars for the board to choose how we spend those, we're much better off. Again, so from a reserve standpoint, we're in good shape, right? Now, again, if we continue on the pattern that we're doing, we spend down that extra 10 million we've got, that continued pattern of deficit spending is not going to work. So one of two things need to happen. We either need to get better property tax revenues, which in this projection, we built in a 3.5% increase on an annual basis. It's actually higher than we used to do. We used to only do a 3, but we did increase it to 3.5. I anticipate that it's going to be about 6% in November. But I can't project that because we have to stay semi-conservative in terms of revenues, right? I'm hopeful that happens. I feel like with home values and prices and new construction happening, I feel good about that, but we'll see in November where we're at, right? So unfortunately, we don't get to wait till November to have the board approve the budget. We have to do it now, right? So again, it's an ever-changing document. The only real time that the board knows how much we took in and how much we spent and what our reserves are is unaudited actuals in September, right? Like that is when we know when we balance our checkbook, basically. So again, from a revenue standpoint, I feel like it's going to be better than what we projected, right? But we'll see how that goes. The other thing that I would point out for you is that there's this blue line. Let's come up. Not sure what I'm saying. There it is. So that blue line is our SB 1090 funds. So we are going to receive $4.6 million through the 25-26 school year, right? And then those funds basically end. Now, people always, well, Diablo Canyon, they're going to stay open. They're going to keep going. What's going to happen? And what I would tell you is we don't know, right? Because first of all, they have not, I mean, they've talked about staying open. The state has said, yes, you can stay open, but there's no licensing. You're going to, for sure got the federal approval. So there's still a lot that can happen with that. And what they're really quiet about, which we haven't heard yet, is if the plant stays open, will they pay unitary tax like they were before? They're not talking about that, right? It never comes up publicly or, in terms of things that we're hearing, right? So what we know is SB 1090, hey, you're gonna drop $6 million a year in unitary tax. We're gonna give you the $36 million, right? And then you have to kind of plan for it ongoing. And that is what that last 25-26 school year is.
Mr. Pinkerton,
Yes.
what exactly does unitary tax mean? Oh, I beg your pardon.
So go ahead.
So,
Mr. Pinkerton.
yeah, unitary tax, I believe is a tax on the utilities. So on electrical, gas, so things like that. So there will always be some unitary tax. But because we have Diablo Canyon within our district boundary, we receive like a substantial amount based on that power plant being in our area, right? So, and we've had that for a long time. I believe back in the early 2000s, the plant was going to close, complete drop, right? The district had to deal with that situation. Again, we were super fortunate with SB 1090 passing, right? That they kind of gave us this roadmap. I feel like we are fortunate that property taxes have risen enough to where we've kind of made up some of that gap long term. It's a good thing. But we're still spending more than we're taking in.
Okay,
Right?
but I'm sorry, I
Go ahead.
still
Yeah.
don't understand. Is unitary tax based on generation of electricity?
I believe so.
So
Of all
if,
those utilities.
so if Diablo continues to perform and to generate, why would we not reasonably expect unitary taxes?
Go ahead.
Well, Mrs. Sheffer and I spent a lot of time during the discussions around the closure of Diablo Canyon. And so unitary tax was a big topic. And the agreement in SB 1090 was that we would agree upon the closure of the plant that would allow PG&E to depreciate the plant, depreciate the asset itself, which would render our receiving contributions from them at a taxable base would be reduced. The unitary tax, as I understand it, now it's complicated, but I'll simplify it. It's a tax across California where it's based on the amount of production that is emitted from the lines, and we in our district, because of Diablo Canyon, get a larger portion of that tax, and that's wonderful and good. But they, meaning the plant, meaning PG&E itself, began depreciating the plant pretty significantly when SB 1090 was signed. So we got the money. They were allowed to depreciate the plant, which means that the amount of taxes they would owe would reduce considerably. And that would parallel the amount of electrical production. So in theory, SB 1090, in theory, followed the closure of the plant, the scheduled closure of the plant. So we would not see any significant reductions in our revenue stream from them. while they closed down the plant. And they gave us a nice, remember, it was a soft landing. And so our question that Mr. Pinkerton is talking about here is now there's discussion at the federal, state level and local level about keeping it open.
Mhm.
They're saying another 5 years, but we're thinking it will be longer, probably much longer, I'm guessing. I'm not in those conversations, but I too have asked, well, what about, yes, we understand the depreciation. We do get that, and that fair is fair, but they're still producing a whole lot of energy. And we have not been able to revisit the conversation around unitary tax being captured. And it wouldn't just be us, it would be other municipalities in the county that are impacted by this as well. So I suspect what will happen over the next few years is people will start asking those very questions. Like, can we revisit some sort of contribution, knowing that you're keeping the plant open, and by way of that, you're producing energy. Now let's go back following the cliff of 2026, because our cliff is also other local municipality cliffs, right? So we could ask the question over the next couple of years, can we revisit the following 2026 being compensated for the unitary tax as if you never shut down the plant.
Hmm.
And so that's a longer conversation, one I look forward to having.
I have
Okay,
something.
I have more questions
Oh,
on this, but there are
after.
other people ahead of me.
Oh, yeah, this was on the same topic, but you want to go ahead and
Well,
it would
we have,
just follow up to
you
that.
and Mr. Banfield's light has been on as well. So however we want to do this, but I just want to make sure everyone has an opportunity to be heard.
It's directly in response to Eric. And so Eric Daniels of PG&E is a neighbor of mine. I've had conversations with him. Now there was, and I also saw in writing somewhere where they contributed substantially to our foundation. Is that correct? And it may be the reason why we can't go back and make it just the way it was before, because they've already given.
Yeah,
Yes.
I want to be very clear. This is not I am very grateful. We, I think, as a whole district are super grateful, and Mr. Daniels and I know each other well. Super grateful for SB 1090, the agreement we made, which not only contributed to our general fund, but also to $10 million to our foundation. So very grateful. And, but that's all predicated on a planned closure of the plant.
Right,
And all of this was done in good faith.
right.
And I want to make that really clear. This is not bad faith. This is good faith. It's just life. Things happen and circumstances change. We know that the carbon emissions goals in California cannot be met absent Diablo Canyon, and it's the last nuclear power plant in the state. So I understand the logic and I support it actually. My question really is about post 2026. And I look forward to at least having the conversation, not in an adversarial way, but in
Oh, no.
a genuinely curious way.
And I think from a layman's perspective, it's kind of like so they have a used car, right? And they're just going to drive the used car. So, hey, they're going to drive for 5 more years. Used car is not worth more, still worth less. In fact, it's going to be worth less over time. Now, if the federal government and the state give them $100 billion to fix that car up, and they're going to run that car for another 20 years, then that may change the conversation about unitary tax, right? And what happens with it. So that's just kind of what we don't know yet. We don't know. I'm expecting it to go away. And not, I mean, my plan is that, as you'll see in this 10-year budget, it's reduced and it goes away. And that's what we had planned for. It's what SB 1090 graciously gave us. And we've had this nice runway, which has been fantastic on their behalf, right? Mr. Banfield.
Well, I'm still trying to wrap my head around how the utility is going to depreciate the plant. Right?
They've done it.
They're doing it,
They're doing it.
but they're not reducing its production.
Right.
Therefore,
So if you look at the small print in the agreement, it was all predicated on the closure of the plant.
Yeah.
And they were going to continue to produce energy for as long as they legally could, safely could do. And so the agreement in SB 1090 is that we would not, they gave us a soft landing. They would do what they needed to do to minimize the impact on their shareholders and on their company, which they've done. I understood it. I understand it. But as to Mr. Pinkerton's analogy of the used car and people pumping in money, that is effectively what's happened over the last few years is the feds and the state have, largely the feds have contributed sizable amounts of money into the plants, into the plant itself to keep it going safely. And here's the thing is it will take a legislative act. It will be a long conversation with lots of public comment. But in terms of this budget and in terms of our 10-year view, we must consider this to be what we are working with.
so to be safe
Mhm.
and to be conservative, we're saying we're not going to receive this after
Yes.
Correct.
24, 25.
Correct.
That's it.
If we do, fantastic. If we don't, we plan for it. We know it's
It'd be a huge wow.
Yes.
Yeah.
And, I'm just going to add, as you know, Mr. Pinkerton, and many people know, we were not the only beneficiaries
All of the
with
cities.
regard, all the cities and other
County.
agencies. And I've heard recently from another agency asking questions about, will this continue, who has received some money, and it's a much tinier amount, but it's a much tinier agency, and they've benefited from the funding they received as a result of the mitigation agreement. And others are asking the same questions. Will there be unitary tax available? Where at the end of the mitigation of the SB 1090, what happens? So everyone is seeing that wall ahead of us, and no one, it will take many conversations with PG&E and to figure out what will occur. But no one has expressed anything but gratitude for what we've gotten. But it is the time, things have changed. The circumstances are different than when we signed on.
So again, Diablo Canyon, the reason why I always bring it up and why we talk about it, one is that we're going to lose to 90 funds in a couple of years, but also just people's perceptions. They read the paper, they see, oh, Diablo Canyon's staying open forever. So yeah, you should get all that money again, right? Not so fast, right? So that's why I talk about it. That's why we bring it up every time I bring up the 10-year budget. This 10-year budget does have the 3% raise for next year. Next year will be a negotiations year, right? With all of our labor groups. So that's something to consider because there is no increases. And you'll see the bottom line becomes a very big deficit really quickly over time if we don't do something about it, right? So, and knowing that our labor groups are going to ask for money, and it's the balance, right, in terms of personnel costs, because as we know, most of our budget is personnel. Highlighting just from a salary perspective, right, just for the board to realize as we look through this. For some reason, it's a different picture than goes up on the screen, but if you look at next year, 24-25, we're anticipating about $56 million worth of costs in our certificated ranks, about 25 million in our classified. And it's really that benefit structure that over the past, since I've been in my position here, has really just dramatically increased, right? From 7% that the district pitched in for STRS or PERS to now 20%, right? 19.1%. 27% for classified folks. On top of that, we also pay Social Security for classified. So another 6.2% on top of the 27%. Right? So, I mean, that's the part, again, that we'll have to really share with employees again, right? In terms of the overall cost. And the governor, a few years ago, they basically, when they signed that law, they put all the pressure on the school district to pay the majority of retirement benefits. And so it comes at a cost, right? So it's okay, it's great, but instead of salary, it's just going to those retirement benefits. And as we know tonight from seeing the retirees, it's really important, right, that they have that structure and those benefits there. Healthcare continues to grow. It's an issue for all of our employees. We continue to look for ways to increase services and keep those caps down. But as you can see, it just continues to grow in terms of costs, right? So basically kind of, two more things that I would say. One is just we have a structural deficit right now. What I mean by that is we are spending more than we're taking in. And over time, we've been fortunate so far. We had the 30 million, now we're down to 10 million, but it will come, right? At this time last year, our 10-year showed that this year was going to be deficit year. But we got fortunate, 6% increase, things were better than we thought, right? So, but still, if you look at the past 6 years, 30 million one time, down to 10 million extra, right? So just know that we are spending that down. Part of my job is to look at staffing, right? And to go through staffing. We have some declines in our elementary ranks. We have a little bit of growth in our secondary, right? In particular, slow high. And so we've seen some declines on the coast. So just as a big picture look, when I did staffing this year, again, we did cut about 7 positions. I think 6 now. We had to add 1 back because again, we're still looking at enrollment, right? So if kids come in, we have too many in the class, we add a teacher. But I think we cut about 6 teachers. However, we did add a few positions. Newcomers teacher at Laguna Middle School, newcomers teacher at Slow High, new bilingual counselor at San Luis Obispo High School, right? Because this higher group is coming through the high school. And so again, you cut 6, you add 3. And then on top of that, we have added 3 TK classes and 8. So like I'm not reducing, right? I'm trying to in terms of reduce personnel, but when you have to add at the same time, they basically becomes a wash. And that's why you see, the potential deficit, right? I don't necessarily see that changing for the next year. In fact, next year TK will be a full year program. We're gonna have to take all 4-year-olds, right? So that'll be expanding. I would guess that we're gonna have at least 2 classes. I'm surprised honestly because we have 3 K classes at probably half of our schools, and we only have 2 TK classes, 1 TK class. So either parents haven't figured it out yet, or that they have a free year of schooling now, or maybe that last group was all born between June and September. We're going to find out, right? That we're going to know next year as it's fully open for all 4-year-olds to come to TK. But those are, again, we also throughout this time, I'll tell you the last 5 years, we kept class sizes really low, in particular in our elementary levels. So and unfortunately that becomes the norm. They're used to having 18, 19, 20 kids in a class, right? I'm not saying all classes were. You'll have a class that has 26 in second grade or first grade, like it happens. But those are the things that doing staffing, have to ramp up a little bit, right? Over time, go through. We try to stay away from combos. I think right now we have 5 combination classes in the entire that's when I was 13 years ago in personnel, we had way more combo classes than we have right now, right? So those are the types of things that we have to just deal with, work towards. And part of that is because we have small elementary sites. So when you only have 30 kids in a grade level or 40 kids in a grade level, are you going to have 2 5th grade, 6th grade classes with 20, right? Or do you have a combination class? So 4, 5 and 6 type of thing. So those are the things that go into those personnel conversations and discussions.
So I just want to ask, I know typically we seem to have been a little all over the place tonight. We usually wait until the end of a presentation before the board asks questions, but we haven't been doing that this evening. I know Mr. Banfield has a question. Would you prefer to wait or do you want to answer it now?
Well, what you were just outlining,
Mhm.
do principals and teachers know that this is happening?
Well, I've talked about it.
Well, but
there's talking about it's going around, talking with sites. Yes, they know. Like we prepared staff, teachers. No, we've talked about personnel costs. Can't give raises if you have more teachers, right? Like it all kind of goes hand in hand. So yes, we've talked about it lots of times, but But when it's your classroom
Yeah, I know.
and your kids in your class, right? So then it's more of a personal thing. So it's hard to, you may know the big picture of what's going on, but it's so hard to like have 26 kids in first grade class, right? It's still
Oh,
difficult
yeah.
to let that sink in, right? That's a rarity, by the way, but yes, it could happen. So those are the things it's what we have to do as we go through. And again, we're very fortunate in San Luis Coastal. Other school districts have much larger class sizes when you go to the south of us, or to the north of us, right? So I talk with my peers and they're 30s in first, second grade, those types of things, right? So we try to keep them as low as possible, of course. The TK1 and the moving to a 10-to-1 ratio instead of 12-to-1, that also will be very financially impactful, right? So you have no wiggle room between, you get to 20, you're done. Like you have to hire another teacher in 8. So those are the types of things that are tough, right? So again, I get to be the downer, the budget guy, but what I would tell you, because that kind of to sum it up, right? So we actually in a good spot right now. We're fortunate. I feel like property taxes are going to get better. So these numbers will hopefully be better in November. But we do have this structural issue that we have to look at, right? And it's people. It's not books. It's not, buying a bus here or there. That's not it. It's 85% of our money is people. So that's the tough part as well, right? Because again, and as I think Stephanie said, as Lisa said, the LCAP's only $6 million. Our budget's 134 million. So we spend a lot of time on $6 million of what we're doing, but again, most of our budget, it's all of those things also, right? So we do a lot more for kids and for programs and those types of things, right, than is necessarily even reflected in the LCAP itself. So that's something we'll continue to work on. I'll be talking with you about the structural deficit, what to do, how it goes, right? I've tried not to cry wolf and, we have to cut and do all that. Measured approach, go through it right. So again, we're still positive this year. 6% comes in again. Well, that deficit will drop significantly for the out years as well, right? Because that every year it'll change. Every year we'll get better. So my hope is that happens. Negotiations will be the tough one next year. So we'll see where we're at. We'll see what we can do. We're gonna have to work with our bargaining units, right? And we're gonna have to stay within our checkbook a little bit, right? And our, what we have in terms of revenue. So our groups have been great in the past, right? We've built some good trust with them as we've gone through. So hopefully that'll carry and we'll have some good conversations as we move forward. So we'll see how that goes.
Great. At this time, I'm going to go to the public about our budget adoption. No one here, no one online. All right. Any further questions or comments from the board? Mr. Banfield.
So we'll be approving this, knowing that we're in deficit spending.
Yes.
All right. Okay.
And we've still got a balance, right? So we're still spending down those one-time dollars. We still look at the overall budget, right, of revenues. It's just something that, and again, we've made some reductions where we had in the past, but we're going to have to continue to look at how we do that. It just becomes tough. The TK thing is really the tough part.
From what I'm just beginning to understand, it seems like these one-time wonderful gifts really become a two-edged sword.
It's the blessing and the curse of one-time money.
Yes.
Really? I mean, gosh, I'd almost want to say thanks, but no thanks. It's like, what do you do with that? Oh yeah, we'll build this up knowing that we're going to have to tighten our belts.
Now, what I will tell you is we will not be alone.
Oh,
And
no.
we will be in way better shape than almost all of our neighboring districts that are state funded.
Well, yeah, they
'Cause
did something with
they're in trouble.
They did
right, in
something
terms
with
of
their
the state budget.
personnel thing, didn't they?
So-
They gave a huge
So
10%.
So it, again, we're okay, stable as it goes type of thing, right? But yes, we are asking you to approve the budget tonight. I feel okay with it, right, in terms of moving forward. And And again, we will know on audited actuals in September. November, we'll know our real property taxes. We'll continue to make adjustments throughout the year and do what we have to do, right, to bring this in balance over the long haul.
Okay,
Okay.
good question.
Oh, Mrs. Roger, you have a question?
I do. This is not an unusual circumstance. Every year we approve the budget under these same conditions.
Yes.
We don't know what property taxes are going to be. We don't know what unaudited actuals are going to be,
Yes.
but we have a drop dead date by which we must approve the budget.
Yes.
And so I am wondering if there is a way that you are able to quantify or project attrition in the out years. Because if we have a retirement of a teacher at the top end of the scale, and that person is replaced by a teacher in their first 5 or 6 years, there is a difference, not in benefits, but in salary.
So we do build in some of that, right, into the budget. So in the bottom line, Katie does have, I think, about 10 retirements or something that we build into it. But we also build a 7 column for those people that are staying, move on, right, on top of the 3% raise. In terms of, I don't envision us having to lay anyone off in the future years. We have plenty of people who retire each year in different positions, and we have openings all the time. So I don't see it from that standpoint, but I wouldn't bank on like all of our older retirees retiring and we're going to hire a bunch of new teachers and then we're going to save all this money. I mean, we've built in offering up to 20 years for our special ed teachers now for hard to fill positions, right? So we're not necessarily getting starting first year teachers. They may come with a lot of years. So several of our retirees, 10, 15 years. So they worked somewhere else for many years and then came to us after that. So that's kind of a tricky one to.
Well, we're offering that incentive for the hard to fill positions,
Yes.
but not across the board.
No.
And we always try not to lay off, always.
Yes.
So
And been
there
successful.
may come a time when we have retirements and that what we'll have to do is increase class size in an effort to maintain staffing.
Potentially, yeah.
Thank you.
There are no more questions. There are no more questions. This is an action item. Someone would like to make a motion?
Do you want to go to the public?
We did go to the
We
public.
did. Okay. Sorry.
Yeah, and then we had a question after. So this is out of control. We're gonna rein it back in. Okay.
So I'd like to talk about the school buses, please. I'd like to move approval of the 24-25 budget. But as I do that, I want to talk about the deficit and the two things that I'd like to say appreciation for. One, we always take a very conservative approach. And so that means we're not, it means we don't have to do cuts usually during the middle of the year. And
Yeah.
I think that's great. Sorry. And we did an enrollment study. I think for years we've sort of said, oh, enrollment's going to go down, enrollment's going to go down. And so what we found in that study is it's going to be, I
Stable.
thought it was going to go down. So the study came back and said it's going to be flat probably. So did that affect your approach to building the budget?
I mean, a little, yeah. I mean, it's flat, right? So I can't anticipate that we're going to lose staffing in the future years. What I would say is that increase in TK kids is what's keeping us flat,
Okay. All right.
right? So we added a whole grade level of
Okay.
kids that we would have seen some reductions.
All right.
Again, we have some areas that we're overstaffed because we have programs or we've done things. We've been very kind to our schools and smaller schools and to make sure that they have the same classes and different opportunities, right? So, but that's kind of the norm now. So shifting away from that, we'll take a lot of conversations with staff and teachers and parents. And
Thanks.
as we
I'm
move
sorry, I
forward.
didn't mean to extend the discussion.
Yeah,
So I'm
that's
going
okay.
to move approval of the 24-25 budget.
Okay, need a second.
I'll second it.
A motion by Mr. Buckman and a second by Mr. Banfield. Mr. Buckman,
Yes.
Mr. Banfield,
Yes.
Mrs. Hinton.
Yes.
Mrs. Roger. Yes. And I am a yes. And that motion carries 5-0.
Go get some sleep, Katie.
Thanks. If someone has a blue pen, I'll sign this. You have, it says blue. I think so. Okay. Our next item is 9.03, update on local indicators.
Hi, Rob. I'm Jennifer O'Hagan. I haven't been here in a while, so I just wanted to introduce myself again. And I am a teacher on special assignment in instructional services, and I work with the ed tech and assessment area. So nice to see all of you here.
And I want to thank Jen for coming. Jen does so much behind the scenes work for us in ISLA, and she has helped to induct me and inform me about how we are able to fill out our local indicator reports, one of the many reports that Mr. Buckman shared on the list. And so what we're reporting on this evening is tied to our LCAP. These local indicators that we are reporting out help inform our LCAP. They're one of the many points of data. These are self-reported scores that we provide to the state, and these are also public data points that indicate our progress. And so Jen's gonna go over these with the board this evening.
And I haven't been here in a while, so I don't know how all the tech works. Can I just use this laptop to go across?
Oh,
Does
here
this
it
work
is.
it?
I'm sorry, I was looking for
There we
that, so
go.
then you press down on
The
this.
down. Okay.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Here we go. All right. So we've had the school dashboard now since 2017. It's been measuring our performance on particular indicators of student success. It is a public-facing website, and it's used to help identify our strengths as well as our areas for improvement. It's important to note that it's not intended to compare us to other districts or to the state. It's just for us to look at our own progress. Okay. So the dashboard is broken down into state indicators and local indicators. State indicators will be covered in a future presentation, and those include data that is collected by the state, such as the data from CalPADS and CASP. But tonight's focus will be on our local indicators. These indicators are those which there is no state level data collected, and we are required to report these results during the annual process of adopting the LCAP. So that's why we're doing this tonight. The data is based on data collected locally, like Stephanie said, such as our local surveys, and by using the State Board of Education adopted self-reflection tools for each local measure. And then the dashboard reports these measures either as standard met, not met, or not met for 2 or more years. Oops, there we go. Okay. All right, so our local indicators, these are the local indicators, and they're based on implementation rather than outcome. And we're going to go through each one on the subsequent slides, but we have 5 of them. So we have teachers and instructional materials and facilities, our implementation of academic standards, parent engagement, there we go, school climate, and access to a broad course of study. And they decided to prioritize them 1, 2, 3, 6, and 7. I don't know why they did it that way. All right. So this is priority 1, and the standard is at the top. So the standard is that we have appropriately assigned teachers access to curriculum aligned instructional materials, and we have safe, clean, and functional school facilities. And so we have met that standard. Okay, priority 2, implementation of state academic standards. And I listed them underneath there that you can see. We just need to make sure that we're annually measuring our progress in the implementation of the state academic standards. And we provide materials that are aligned with those standards, and we always provide support for our staff and teachers with professional development and implementation. Priority 3 is parent engagement. As you can see, it's building relationships and partnerships for student outcomes, and we are seeking input for decision making. And below that, you can see the various ways in which we do that. We use our Parent Square two-way communication tool. We have our LCAP survey. We have DLAC, ELAC, BTAC, all those acronyms, our Student Senate, etc. we've met that as well. And then our school climate, that is the California Healthy Kids Survey, and we administer that every other year. We also do a youth truth survey. We analyze the results and we report those results to our school board. So, Priority 7, access to a broad course of study. This just means that we're ensuring that all of our students are enrolled in a broad course of study as specified by Ed Code. We use our tools such as ARIES, our student information system, to track their enrollment. And if we have any issues, we are always ready to remedy those issues to ensure that students all have access. Again, this is just a final slide. I'm not going to play the video, but this is, I encourage you to go on to the school dashboard. It's public. There's lots of things you can click around and discover there. I'm always learning new things whenever I go on the dashboard. That's it.
I'd like to go to.
Do you have any questions?
Well,
Sorry.
that's what I was
I'm
just getting
sorry.
ready to, no, don't, yeah, not so fast.
I'm out of practice. I haven't done this in a while.
That's all right. That's all right.
Okay.
We're all out of practice. It's getting near the end of the year. Is there anyone from the public who would like to address us on this? Seeing no one, I'll come back to the board. Ms. Hinton.
Oh, I didn't realize my light was on.
Oh, all right. Mr. Buckman.
Wow, it's been a while. Welcome back.
Thank you.
Good to see you.
Good to see you.
As I look at this, I'm just so impressed with our district. We're met in so many places, but sometimes we're like out of the red and we've come into the orange, and it's just a little scary. So what happens when we as a district go from red to orange? We don't stop trying really hard, right? Is there anything that's triggered when we get into orange?
Well, our local indicators aren't going to have the red and orange. It's going to be our state indicators. But how this works is it's looking at progress. So if we go from red to orange and then we stop, then we're going to go back to red. So we have to keep pushing. That's how it works.
Thank you.
Anyone else? All right. Thank you. Thanks so much. It's
Thanks.
good
Nice to
you
see
again.
everybody.
Thanks. Okay. Our next item is 9.04, student attendance.
Well, board, I already alluded a little highlights about the great attendance progress we've been able to make happen this school year. I want to begin, of course, by celebrating the hard work of our cabinet team, Janet, also Chris Dowler, also Stephanie Shepard, and I met with our principal leader team on multiple occasions to discuss the importance of attendance and what our system currently does to support regular attendance, as well as to develop new processes and systems over the past year to support attendance. And our work is not done, but we have made some huge gains and growth already. So all year, you've been receiving updates on our chronic absenteeism rates. And chronic absenteeism is a student that misses 10% or more of the school year. And if you think a school year is about 10 months long, that means they miss 1/10 of the educational opportunities that they had. And if you think about that over the course of their entire K-12 and now soon to be TK through 12 experience, they miss out on an entire school year of school if you add up those 1 months each year that they're missing. And it's a big issue that we want to address. But what's also kind of funny about tracking chronic absenteeism is this is one of those indicators we're trying to get the numbers smaller. Low numbers is better, high numbers are bad. And we know that research shows that attendance is such an important factor in student achievement. We know that as early as 6th grade, attendance is one of only 3 indicators about high school dropout rates. We also know by ninth grade that attendance is a better indicator of their ability to graduate from high school than even their eighth grade student achievement test scores. So those are some of the reasons why we know developing habits of attendance to be so important early on. So attendance is one of the California dashboards. This is all public information that we actually shared with you earlier this school year, but to review, these are our non-Title I elementary schools from previous school year, not 23-24, but this was during 22-23. And some of them are in orange and some of them are in yellow, but across the bottom, you'll see that all of them were moving in the wrong direction and declined. Oh, no, the decline here is actually good. Sorry. The declining is good. Remember in chronic absenteeism. Our Title I elementary schools on the coast, again, are in yellows, and we're trying to reach for that blue-green zone. Our Title I elementary schools from the city are also in the yellow zone. Our middle school, Los Osos, is in the yellow, but our friends at Laguna had some moving in the wrong direction, and they ended up in the red zone, and that's why they are called out in our LCAP as one of the red indicators. So looking at this is district-wide chronic absenteeism, and you'll see before the pandemic, we were at 9.6% of our students. So about 10% of our students were chronically absent. And then post-pandemic, last school year, we went all the way up to a quarter of our students. Now, this is not something that only happened in San Luis Coastal Unified School District. It happened across the nation. It happened across the county. There's been lots of media reports that continue to go on about how schools and school districts are combating and supporting students and coming to school regularly. But I am excited to report that this school, we've already decreased it down to 14.4. So our work is not done, but we nearly cut it in half. In looking at different age groups, because as you know, they're each a little bit different, right? High schoolers can cut class, they can leave, they can walk off our open campuses. So it's a little bit different. And combined for our high schoolers, we're at 17% chronically absent. Pacific Beach, our alternative continuation high school, you know, students attend in 3-hour chunks and not every day. And so their attendance of chronic absenteeism is higher than our traditional comprehensive high schools. Interestingly enough, although SLO High is the largest of our high schools, they have the least amount of chronic absenteeism. In our middle schools, which I already kind of previewed for you, they're going to be a focus area for us next school year because they are also basically up at that 17%. And we know that many of our middle schoolers are brought to us by families or not brought to us by families on any one given day. And we really want to make sure that we work with parents and children in feeling like they belong and they want to be at our schools. And so that's going to be a cultural focus moving forward next school year. But it's at 16.7. It is still better than the 24% the year before. Let me remind you, we're moving in the right direction, but our work is not done. And this I'm particularly excited about because in our Title I elementary schools, and our non-Title I elementary schools, we have nearly eliminated the achievement gap in attendance. So our Title I elementary students are chronically absent at 12.2%, but you'll see that's cut more than in half. And in our non-Title I schools, we're at 11.1. So they're only 1% difference between those student populations. We also know historically that some subgroups of students have a particularly hard time maintaining attendance for a variety of reasons. And so we look very closely at our attendance data by all sorts of subgroups. And what's exciting, you'll notice over on the far right-hand column is every subgroup of students except for foster youth moved in the right direction. And most of them made double-digit changes this school year in the right direction. So we're very excited about that. And we do have a plan you'll see on the next page to specifically address that foster student population. But we're super excited. So another way to look at attendance is the positive attendance count. So on any given day, what percentage of your students are there as an average over the course of the whole year? And that's traditionally what school districts call ADA, or average daily attendance. And that's how they get paid by the state. So we did want to take a look at that data as well and see if we were moving in the right direction or the wrong direction. And you'll see that from last year to this year, Laguna Middle School moved in the right direction 7%, Los Osos Middle School moved in the right direction 10%, Morro Bay High moved about 5%, Tac Beach, although I showed you overall is significantly lagging, you'll see here they're making huge growth. And San Luis Obispo High School also moved in the right direction. And looking at our elementary schools, those ones highlighted yellow, look at those double-digit gains at Baywood Title I School, Del Mar at Title I School, Monarch Grove, and C.L. Smith. And so that really shows the hard work that those schools are doing. It's interesting to note, I just thought of this, Monarch and C.L. Smith are both Leader in Me schools. I wonder if that's also playing a role in this attendance work. But again, you'll see every one of our elementaries on the positive attendance is also moving in the right direction. So overall, we've reduced chronic absenteeism by about 10%, and we've improved our positive attendance rate by about 10%, but 6 of our schools were with double-digit gains. We've nearly eliminated the gap between our Title I and non-Title I elementary students. Every student subgroup has already made a reduction in their absenteeism, except that foster group. We know that some subgroups are still struggling to come to school at the same rates as their peers, and so we have a plan for that. And middle school is really the level of students that were most challenged in coming to school. So moving forward into 24-25 next school year, we will continue to monitor our attendance and continue the tier 1 things we put in place, such as newsletter blurbs, sending home letters to families, having the SARB meetings, all of those things. We're going to continue to do what we started to do this year. One of the notable exciting trends was Jamie Fazio, shout out to Jamie Fazio in IT, that created a nightly query to give principals updated attendance data that they could then actuate the next day, looking for students who had missed days of school. I told you for our foster youth students, we're going to write basically an individualized plan for each of them. So at the beginning of the fall, principal, counselor, student, and family will meet to discuss and set a goal for what their attendance will be, what supports they need to be put in place by the school to support their attendance, and some regular follow-up meetings. And we'll see if that can affect their attendance. We are also going to focus on non-binary students, SPED students, and African American subgroup students. And those will be addressed kind of in groups with a tier 2 plan. So every school will write a plan to address the attendance of their non-binary students. What's your plan to address the attendance of your SPED students? And what's your plan to address the African American student subgroup in your school? And then finally, we talked about holding attendance academies probably once a quarter at the middle schools to be able to come.
Thank you.
Questions and feedback?
Right, let's go to the public first. Nothing? Okay, Mr. Buckman, Mr.
Oh, I
Finn,
think,
Mr. Banfield.
I think Mr.
All right. Mr. Banfield, Mrs. Hint will go in the other order.
Sorry.
Mr. Banfield, Mrs. Hinton.
So you mentioned letters and SARB. What else has worked? Because this is wonderful. What else have you been doing?
Well, I'm happy to invite others up to speak to it. Primarily, one thing was actually pulling data out of our student information system, getting our principals to pull data and see the names of students, and then following up with each of the students that are chronically absent. Also, there was a welcome attendance information posted at our TKK welcome centers to try and increase positive attendance. We also made sure we're updating like our websites right now with information about attendance and how to report an absence, but also why attendance is late. I think it was allowing principals the time and space to think about what they wanted to do about it, and then working alongside the teaching staff to express to the kids and the families how important it is to come every day.
So you mentioned that principals have been able to get information
At their
more
fingertips.
quickly
Yes.
about those students that are
Yeah.
not attending. What kind of follow-up have they been doing? You said they would allow them to
Oftentimes
follow
it
up.
would be a parent-teacher conference or an email through Parent Square to families,
Okay.
alerting them about the concerns and offering supports and having a parent meeting.
Mrs. Hinton.
I just think it's really creative and thinking outside the box to have, and it's sort of like an individual attendance plan, an IAP.
Exactly. It is going to be
Yeah.
like an IEP, but
Mhm.
for attendance. You got it.
Yeah, that's really what we need, that more attention on those who have a harder time, just because life is more difficult.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Mr. Buckley.
This is great. Thank you very much. I like the IAP as well. And I'm sitting here thinking, how amazing would it be if we could just do that for every student? It's just absolutely amazing. Really hard, but maybe a spreadsheet.
We'll start with 38 and
Okay.
then we'll move on to the
Okay.
7,000.
Thank you. Thanks.
Sure.
But it would be really cool.
It would be super cool.
So I'm just kind of wondering, it's kind of interesting that the subgroups foster
Mhm.
kind of match the same subgroups that the LCAP is supposed to focus on. So maybe the state's onto something, at least on that. So I thought that was interesting. Also, I'm wondering, I'm not good with statistics, so this could be really simple and I just don't get it. So if there's a subgroup that has, say, 10 students, probably really close for our African American, maybe 25. And they have 5 kids that, I don't know, what percentage point does that make? It's huge, right? As
Yeah.
opposed to a subgroup that has, okay, so I'm kind of right there. So is there any way to statistically make that like somehow common among them? I don't know how you would even do that, but.
Let me think about that.
Okay, thanks. Let's do that next time. But I also think it's interesting. So it may look like a subgroup is more challenged or whatever, and it really isn't. It's just the number of kids that they start out with. And so I would be very cautious about making big conclusions out of those percentage numbers. And thanks for all this work. I appreciate it.
Mr. Banfield.
Well, this is besides everything. I just wanted to comment that both you and Stephanie wore comfortable shoes tonight.
I'm glad you're paying attention to my footwear, Rob. Thank you.
Mrs. Rogers.
Thank you. This is great information, valuable information. My question has to do with the attendance academies at the middle school level.
Oh,
Which
okay.
is-
We are
this is
in
the-
the early planning phase, my friend, but I can tell you what's in Lisa's head.
Part of it. It sounds like, and maybe I'm totally misinterpreting it. Is this sort of like the old Saturday school, which was disciplinary, but now
Breakfast-
has an educational component?
Yeah, breakfast club, but not. So it's not that we want to punish children who don't like coming to school to come sit in school and be unhappy even more. We would want to ensure that the students that are invited to participate in this attendance and academic academy have enriching, engaging, but still academically structured learning opportunities in the 4 hours that they spend with us. There are times and rules around to recapture attendance, and I'm learning from experts like Katie and Ryan about to recapture ADA. Although we're not going to recapture
don't get
ADA, but we can change our attendance numbers. We can still reduce. We can give children credit for attending a day of school. If they come the 4 hours, we feed them and we provide transportation, and it's a credentialed teacher.
So is invited to attend euphemistic for assigned?
I mean, essentially, yes, it will be a principal deciding which students need to attend, reaching out to their families, coming to some kind of agreement about, yes, they can attend, or no, they can't attend this one and they'll come to the next one, or why can't
So
they
in that
attend-
way, it's different, really different from the disciplinary Saturday school
Yes.
where you, whatever your transgression was, you're gonna come and you're gonna pick up trash on Saturday.
Yes, it is not meant to be disciplinary in any way, shape, or form.
Okay, thank you.
So I just want to be clear for myself. So a district that has average daily attendance, many districts, that's what their income is for the entire year. And there's about 10 of us being one of them, that our budgets are not based on average daily attendance. So for a district that is average daily attendance, and attendance really is important, the outreach may be bigger and the intent to help is bigger. And so I'm really grateful to see that we're going to take this approach that's stronger, because a district basic aid like we are, it, might be remiss, and there's not as much incentive. So I'm really excited about to see this incentive that's just based on student performance as opposed to dollars that are coming in. So this is really cool, really, really cool.
Ms. Roger.
Thank you. Just one last thing. I would appreciate a little deeper dive into the reason PB has such a high absentee rate, maybe in Friday notes at some point over the summer.
Yes, I'll be
Okay.
happy to follow up on that with Mr. Dowler's assistance and help. We have talked about it, and in fact, he is leading the work with our other high schools about engaging individuals in attendance. And I think he shared earlier that the students that attend Pac Beach have a level of choice in getting themselves to school at Pac Beach and
Mhm.
going for the 3 hours, and may have competing either outside demands like work that's interfering at a different rate than students in our comprehensive high schools. Nevertheless, we very much want them to attend regularly so they can earn their diplomas and graduate and move on. So we'll continue to work with
Okay.
Pac Beach as
Yeah,
well.
I understand that their circumstances
Yeah.
are different in many ways than our students in the comprehensive high schools, and that many of them work, some are parents, there are lots of reasons why they might miss school. I would just be interested to hear what Mr. Dowler thinks about it and how it might be improved.
Very much so. We'll be
Okay.
happy to dig into that.
Thank you.
There's nothing else. Thank you. We will move on to 9.05, certification to the State Board of Education temporary athletic coaches for this says 2023-24. Is that right?
It's this school year, yeah.
It's this school year.
Yes.
Okay, we've gotten so accustomed to thinking in terms of next school year. Okay,
Yeah. Yes, annually, we have to just certify. It's not with every name, it's just that we followed the processes throughout the school year. So each year, the Board of Education is required to certify to the State Board of Education that the provisions of Title V, Section 5593 have been met. In accordance with this section, a temporary athletic coach shall verify knowledge, competencies, qualifications in several areas, including but not limited to care and prevention of athletic injuries, coaching techniques, rules and regulations in the athletic activity being coached, and adolescent psychology. In addition, as you would imagine, similar to volunteers, we TB test them, we fingerprint them, make sure that they're good to be with our students. And then this form, we have followed that process with the help of our athletic directors this year.
I'd like to go to the public, which there's no one present. Anyone on Zoom? No one. All right. Any questions from the board? Ms. Roger.
Thank you. I just want to be sure, Mr. Block, that the temporary athletic coaches also receive the trainings that we've instituted for our other coaching staff with regard to what is appropriate behavior with students.
They also get trained in safe sports, correct?
Thank you.
Else? Okay, this is an action item, so if anyone would like to make a motion.
I'll move approval of item 9.05.
Thank you.
Second?
We have a motion by Mrs. Roger and a second by Mrs. Hinton. Mrs. Roger.
Yes.
Mrs. Hinton.
Yes.
Mr. Buckman.
Yes.
Mr. Banfield.
Yes.
Yes, that motion carries 5-0. Next is a Measure C, action item lease back sublease amendment number 1, studying the CMP for the Pacheco Phase 1 temporary housing project. Mr.
Yeah,
Chairman.
so again, another Measure C, we're starting to ramp up. It's starting to, hit this summer. A lot of projects around the district. This particular project is putting in 9 temporary classrooms at Pacheco Elementary School. There will be 4 on the blacktop near the I Innovate classroom, that side. So still, they have such a large blacktop at Pacheco that we'll still be able to have blacktop and other areas for them. And then actually, 5 other portables on the field portion closer to the multipurpose room. So that requires it's kind of a sloped hill there, so they have to build up the ground, retaining wall behind those. But again, we're bringing in these 9 classrooms so that we can go through each of the 9 classroom wings and do the entire wing at a time. So that's, it seems like a lot, but in order to have school function and run while we go through this process of construction, I'm at the site. This really, instead of doing like 2 classrooms at a time, this really, it saves a lot of money by being able to do the entire wing long-term throughout. So we'll do the first wing, which is the TK kindergarten wing closest to the street. And then after that's done, they'll move in and then we'll do the second wing, which is closer to the blacktop area. So we've had a little confusion in the past about these GMPs. So I had Kelly Lee change the front sheet. And what you'll see on the front sheet is a breakdown of the potential payments. And so the total GMP that we're asking the board to approve tonight is $1,769,447.85. The payments, we basically take off the allowances because those are unknown. They only receive those funds if they do that work. For instance, we're going to be taking 4 portables from Vicente behind Pacific Beach, old portables. So you'll see one of the allowances, dry rot repairs, siding, wood fencing, right? So again, depending on that, oftentimes we'll do that on a time and material basis. So basically our inspectors out there, hey, they say it takes 8 hours to put the siding on. The inspector charts, sees when they start, checks, turns in time cards for the employees, as well as we get the materials bills. So a lot of times it's, again, time and materials for those. So we know exactly what the cost is. And so then we also take off the owner contingency because that's not automatically in their payment system. I did ask Ms. Lee about in terms of holding money back in construction. And basically what she told me is we don't pay the last 2 payments until the work is complete. So that's kind of our retention, what we hold back, right? Just so you know. So I think it's all pretty square. This it's something that we've been worked through and feel pretty good about moving forward. And again, it will allow us to do the project much more rapidly once we start construction on the classroom wings.
Okay,
That's
thank
good.
you. Go to the public on Zoom. Okay. Any questions or comments from the board? This also is an action item.
Mhm.
Mr. Banfield?
I move that we approve of this. It's going to be good,
This one.
very good.
Okay. Second. And a second by Mrs. Roger. Mr. Banfield?
Yes.
Mrs. Roger? Yes. Mr. Blackman?
Yes.
Mrs. Hinton?
Yes.
Yes. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next is 9.07, proposed revisions to board policy 0460, local control and accountability plan, first reading.
Good evening, board members. I am here to bring before you the board policy 0460, local control and accountability plan update. And this policy is updated to reflect the new law SB 114 from 2023, which required numerous changes to the local control and accountability plan. And as we talked about earlier tonight, it specifically adds long-term English learners as defined by new law SB 141, 2023. As a student who has not attained English language proficiency and been reclassified as an English learner. They also updated the policy to add new headers for clarity, align the structure of the policy with the LCAP process, and clarify references to the annual update and budget overview pieces of the LCAP.
Thank you. We do have a comment on this submitted by a member of the public that Mrs. Roger will read.
Okay, the board received written comment from Jacqueline Lowe regarding this item, and it reads as follows. Dear Board of Education, I will not be able to attend tonight's meeting. However, I do want to submit written comments on an agenda item for this evening. Item 9, discussion action, 9.07, proposed revisions to Board Policy 0460, Local Control and Accountability Plan, first reading. There are many revisions to the policy that are good and important. However, I am deeply concerned that the board is being presented with a policy change that aims to remove the intent of one of the LCAP purposes, as well as the SLCUSD's core principles and values for collaboration and civil discourse, culture of care and safety, and continuous improvement, and one of the district-wide goals for staff and family support in order to eliminate a collaborative, community-based process. Page A's new language aims to remove, quote, community-based from the LCAP process appears to suggest an effort to further limit, if not eliminate, access from the community to be engaged in the organization's progress and accountability. Page C shows the proposed removal of the board's ability to, quote, consult with other community organizations, stakeholders, and interested groups in developing the LCAP, end quote. I request that the board inquires about the intentions behind these language revisions in order to protect and ensure the ability for the LCAP process to remain a public process that truly allows accessible pathways for all educational partners to participate. This cannot and should not be an exclusive process, and I ask that the board fulfill their duty to guarantee that any parent, regardless of their access to a committee group, has the opportunity to be engaged. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Right, this is just a first reading this evening. It's there's no urgency to this evening. I see, Mr. Buckman, did you have a question or comment?
Yes. So I have been sort of a pain as it comes to the LCAP this year. And my biggest concern was community input. And as I did more and more research, unfortunately at the state level, it's not a real high priority. It's not even one of the focus groups. But the thing that I learned is within the LCAP process, community means the school community. It means students, staff, and whatever, administration. And so by the committee, by taking the word community-based out, was trying to actually open the process. And so I think it's unfortunate that the word is community, but clearly I think in the code that's around the LCAP, community refers to the school community. So I'm not sure if there's another way to fix this, but I know that the intent was to actually open this up as opposed to constrict it.
I would just like to add that as we discussed earlier this evening, the avenues and opportunities for community input for the last 6 months have been wide and varied. So we can certainly look at this again. The subcommittee can. I don't know whether Ms. Yamashita has further suggestions or thoughts, but this is just a first reading.
Yeah, I would like, if I may, share with the board a couple other facts and the public at large. The two language updates that Mrs. Lowe references in that email were both recommended to us to be made. No board policy subcommittee member suggested taking out community or suggested removing the sentence. Those were suggestions by GAMET, which is the California School Board Association's policy experts. And so we went ahead and used the language that they recommended that we use. We do not want to marginalize or cut out any member of our community from providing feedback or engaging in the process with us in any way, shape, or form. In fact, we have regularly reached out to Mrs. Lowe in the superintendent's office to meet with her and her very engaged husband, Michael Lowe, to come and speak with us directly about the recommended changes for the LCAP. So we do reach out to the community on many occasions, as we shared with you earlier tonight and read from that list, and we will continue to do so as we move into implementation of the LCAP, as we hear from teachers that things aren't working, or we have a parent conference for a student about a program that's not working, we will continue to revise and work to serve our students as best we can.
Thank you. Mrs. Roger,
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't realize my light was on.
Mrs. Hinton.
Yeah, just to emphasize and highlight what you were saying about, it was Gamut that took out community-based, not the board. It was Gamut that had put it in, as you said, and then took it out. So they giveth and they taketh away. And that's what it's a little bit peculiar to me that they did it. So we will look at that again and see perhaps how we can add it back in or.
My personal reading of it, not that I spoke with anyone at Gamut yet, because this just came to our attention earlier today, is I believe Gamut was trying to refocus on the sentence following that. I think is like comprehensive and data driven. And as you know, what the new law of the new 3-year template really elevates and highlights is metrics to measure the performance of every action that we take. And so I think they were trying to emphasize that when we're trying to evaluate our programs, we're not evaluating them based on how great everyone says they are or how terrible everyone says they are, but instead we're evaluating our program and action steps according to the student production data. And I believe that's why they took it out of that first sentence, because later on it does explicitly state that we have to survey people and take feedback and input, and the superintendent must respond in writing to the questions they receive.
Yes, it does.
Yeah,
On page
it
C.
does.
Yeah.
Thank you. Mr. Buckman.
And not to take too much time, but Gamut is I guess like a department of the California School Boards Association. They're the only group that I know of that looks at every board policy, looks at them on a regular basis, updates them on a regular basis. So the link between the value to school boards and Gamut is huge. And most times, we tend to agree with them, although there is a subcommittee of the board of three of the school board members that also looks at every board policy. So just throw that out.
Thank you. All right, so this will
Will this come back as a second
back as a
reading, or do you
second-
want me to take it back to the board policy subcommittee?
I personally don't feel the need for it to come. I feel that we've addressed the concerns here this evening, but I will defer to my other committee members. If you feel you'd like to take another look at it or bring it back for a second reading.
Well, sorry, Marilyn.
I'm asking the subcommittee first to see if they'd like to take another look at it,
So,
but the
so
whole board has. I was asking if the subcommittee would like to take another look at it, and I guess it's open to the board as well. You're saying you'd like to bring it back, and I'll see what others want to do.
So if somebody from the public has taken the time to address this. And if, as I understand it, that family may be coming to meet with the superintendent, is that what, there's an offer been made to meet with that family and discuss this board policy? I kind of think we ought to wait and see maybe what comes out of that discussion before we move forward with this.
If that's possible to have that between now and the second reading, then problem solved, I would say.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, I mean, typically, it's the subcommittee, it's the board that decides how we're going to proceed on our policy questions. So I appreciate the public input. I'm not trying to dismiss it at all. We've had some comments made, and then it still remains up to the board, to the subcommittee and the board as a whole, how to proceed. I
So
mean,
as one of the three committee members, I'm asking for, if the meeting happens before, then we bring it forward as it is. If something's brought up at that meeting that really is kind of something we really ought to examine, then I think we ought to hold off. So I'll leave it at this point, in my opinion, we leave it up to Mrs. Yemish and superintendent.
Yeah, at first I thought the subcommittee should look at it before the member of the public, meeting. But I could go either way on that.
well, perhaps you could make that outreach as you've done here tonight in the meeting and again, and then we'll, we had another member of the public wrote an email to the board or requesting to take a look at another policy, and we reached out to, Ms. Yamashita reached out to him. They had a discussion. I had a discussion with him today. And we are ready to move forward on that one, with that one as a second reading, as a result of, just explaining the process and his expressed understanding of the process, and that we could, that he understood the reason for the policy. So I would request, I suppose, that we do the same thing here, that
Okay.
we,
Reach out to the member of the public and then follow up with the board policy subcommittee to make a
Yes.
choice.
yeah.
Very well. I understand.
Okay, thank you. All right, we will move on to the action consent agenda. Please let me know if you'd like anything pulled. 10.01, approval of certificated and classified personnel items. 10.02, certification to the Board of Education, temporary athletic coaches for the 2023-24 spring sports season. 10.03, approval of revised facility use fee schedule. 10.04, approval of Los Osos Middle School recycled water user agreement. 10.05, approval of minutes, March 19, 2024. 10.06, approval of minutes, April 2, 2024. 10.07, approval of purchase orders and CalCard purchases. 10.08, resolution numerical change. 10.09, approval of warrants and payroll. 10.10, proposed revisions to board policy 5145.12, search and seizure, second reading. Okay. Nothing was pulled. If someone could please make a motion with regard to the consent agenda.
I move that we approve items 10.01 to 10.10.
Second it?
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Banfield and a second by Mrs. Hinton. Mr. Banfield,
Yes.
Mr. Buckman, or Mrs. Hinton?
Yes.
Mr. Buckman?
Yes.
And I am a yes, and it appears that Mrs. Roger has left. Okay, we will move on to board reports.
I feel like my board report's going to be long tonight, and it is a way of me sort of showing that I'm active, but it also, I feel, shows the diversity of this community and the support and the number of people that volunteer in this community. So here goes my long thing. So I was able to attend the League of Women Voters event, and normally we talk about homelessness, but Ann Wyatt, who spoke, talked about so many alternatives, like tiny homes, but we're talking like 200 square foot homes or less. We're talking about people my age sharing their homes and sharing the costs, and as a real program. And I just, it was really a really good meeting. Saturday, later that night, I attended the Arab music concert at Cal Poly. It was great. A friend of mine, it plays in and the link between the ethnic studies program that we just approved and one of the parts of the ethnic studies program being look within your own community, what's happening in your own community. It was a real opportunity to do that. Let me see what else I got here. Sunday, I was in a booth at the Pride in the Park event, and I have been real active, but the California, let's see, what is it called? Central Coast Coalition for Inclusive Schools, and I worked in the booth, and every year this event just gets better and better and better, and I urge people to try to attend it. And did I do anything? I think I did something else. I attended a Zoom meeting for the California School Boards Association Ledge Action Committee. We look at, I don't know, there's another 20 pieces of legislation that we looked at, but the discussion, a lot of it revolved around the California School Boards Association push to have the governor's proposed budget not, I was going to say not taken seriously, but to be drastically changed because it would have threatened the primary security, the primary protection for school district budgets. It would have changed Prop 98, and the legislature is going to be backing off of that. So I'm going to go get some sleep, but also this is just, I mean, what's going on here with the different people in our community is just amazing.
Brian, there's Brian. Well, I had, yeah, we're doing board reports.
Oh, I attended the SLO High School Senior Showcase this week.
Yay. Okay. So Dr. Salcido over at Monarch invited me. She says, Rob, would you like to be one of the judges or whatever at Battle of the Books? I knew what Battle of the Books was, but so I went, and I happened to work with a former student who was a parent. I'm getting a lot of that now, but it was just really fun. I was amazed at the knowledge and the recall that these kids have when they, because they're supposed to state, they huddle as a group, they come up with their answer, and then the person holding the flag is the one that gives the answer, and they have to have the title and they have to have the author. And I'm just amazed. So I asked some of the kids, I said, well, how many books did you read? 10. How many did you read? 12. How many did you read? 15. Gosh, it was so neat to see. Lots of enthusiasm. Good sportsmanship was just wonderful.
Thanks, everybody. This will conclude our meeting. We're adjourned. Thank you.